Here we go. Okay, all sorts of exciting things just happened, everyone.
That's all the live.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, everything is happening. It's recording. We are live on Facebook. Hello, everyone. My name is Yvette Brooks, and I am the mayor for the city of Capitola. And I have the honor of speaking with a few amazing leaders in our community, true heroes, and I'm just fascinated with everything that you do. I'd like to welcome Fire Marshal Mike DeMars this evening, who heads the CRR division, which also carries the countywide wildland preparedness efforts. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock with the sun still out.
Still getting used to that.
Yeah, me too. And Fire Chief John Walbridge, I just wanted to say hello to you and give the group, all of our listeners, our people watching this evening, a brief synopsis of your background, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
All right. So Chief Walbridge grew up in the Live Oak area and has lived in Capitola since 1998 with his wife of 24 years. He has 2 college daughters and 1 son in high school. He graduated from Harbor High and has an AS degree from Cabrillo College and a BA from UCSD. Fire Chief Walbridge's first contact and subsequent interest in the fire service started in the late 1970s when he was tasked by his father to ride his bike to the Live Oak Fire Station #1 on 17th Avenue to retrieve burn permits from firefighters that he would ultimately work with over 10 years later. Fire Chief Walbridge began his professional career in the fire service in 1990 as a seasonal firefighter with CAL FIRE. In 91, he began with the Central Fire Protection District as a paid call firefighter. Since that initial appointment, Chief Walbridge has held the positions of firefighter, firefighter paramedic, captain paramedic, battalion chief, temporary division chief, and fire chief. Chief Walbridge was one of Central Fire Protection District's first 3 firefighter paramedics. Chief Walbridge's past responsibility have included logistics chief, operations chief, safety officer, Central Fire Investigation Team, emergency response coordinator, emergency medical services manager, and the facilities inventory manager. Chief Walbridge holds an associate's degree in fire protection technology from Cabrillo and a bachelor's degree in chemistry, as I mentioned, at UCSD. And he's also the California Certified Investigator 1, Fire Officer, and Chief Officer. My goodness, sir, it is a pleasure to have you on today. This is #2 of my town hall series. If I would have known all the amazing things you've done, I would have made you the first one because this is incredible. Thank you so much, you both, for being here. So this meeting is being recorded and is on live Facebook. Questions this evening can be entered into the chat and will be addressed at the end. However, questions on Facebook, if you're on watching right now, are not being monitored, so please don't type in into the Facebook chat. As I mentioned, my name is Yvette, and I am the mayor for the city of Capitola and your host tonight. So we're just going to jump right on in, if that's okay with the 2 of you.
Good.
Okay, so we are on till no later than 7. So I'm just going to start with Chief Walbridge. Tell us about your new role as chief. What are those responsibilities like?
Well, let me start out, Mayor Brooks, by thanking you and also kind of pointing out that you're not only the hostess tonight, you're also the moderator and you set up all of this all on your own. So you've got a big task ahead of you as far as keeping that all going. I usually bring in a team if I'm doing anything like this because I have trouble walking and chewing gum at the same time. So thank you for having us on, and thank you for basically showcasing the relationship I think that Capitola City and your fire district, Central Fire, has in the past, in the present, and into the future. So thank you for inviting both of us. And on to your question is, my role as the fire chief ongoing is not really different than the prior roles. What has changed is the team that we worked with, which was outside the organization and within the organization, and there's more questions that kind of lead into it, was recently successful in consolidating Aptos La Selva Fire Protection District and Central Fire Protection District into what is now known as Central Fire District. So huge team effort. I want to, certainly give a big, extend a thank you to Supervisor Zach Friend, past Supervisor John Leopold, as well as Executive Officer for LAFCO, Joe Serrano, as well as the prior Executive Officer, Pat McCormick. So just to name a few, I mean, I could go on and on and on. As well as all of our internal stakeholders and the employees that work so hard that have, some have retired, some are still here to see this effort through. This has been a 30-year process in the making. And then on to the actual question is, what's my role? My role really is to facilitate the forward trajectory of this new organization. The last 3-4 years, we've found ourselves deeply entrenched in the process of consolidation, which ended on February 4th with a successful consolidation. We overlapped probably the last 2 years with a very big effort toward transition and starting to lay the groundwork for transition. And we're deeply into transition now. We're working hard, like extra hours, trying to get, if you kind of think at it from the perspective of, say, Capitola City, and you are going to consolidate or merge with another city, every single document, every single personnel policy, every single standard operating procedure, every single document would have to be changed, looked at, and evaluated. And it gives you an opportunity to find best practices. We may not have had best practices in some categories, and it's an opportunity to reach out and find those practices. So as you might imagine, just a ton of work going into transition around the beginning of the fiscal year. My intent and the elected officials' intent is to move forward on a planning phase. That planning phase will take the two agencies' prior documents that related to planning, as far as a master plan and strategic plan, and we'll roll that into kind of a new perspective plan with the assistance of a consultant into a 15 to 20 year long range master plan. That long range master plan will culminate into a set of recommendations. Those recommendations will be prioritized for the next 5 years. And give ourselves some realistic goals to look toward and work toward in the next 5 years. So we'll take that long range master plan and we'll bite it off into chunks of 5-year pieces. And we'll start to work on the execution of that once that plan is completed. So at the end of this, we'll start to phase, and by the end of this, I mean probably this time next year, we'll start to phase out, or the intensity of the transition will start to wane. We'll be, toward the end of the planning process, and we'll be starting the execution process. So my role is to facilitate all of that and make sure that we keep the doors open and we keep the responses going in the middle of this major transition and major change. And again, this has been 30, 40 years in the making, and a lot of work still to be done, but we're going to get there, and we'll be better for it. So
absolutely,
a short answer.
No, that was wonderful. I actually have the pleasure of working with Mr. Serrano on LAFCO. I am on the commission now, and he's incredible. I'm so happy that you've been able to work with him. Mr. DeMars, I mentioned CRR division, and full disclosure, no idea what that is.
You don't know what that is, do you?
No.
It's okay, because nobody else does either. I, as the fire marshal, I am in charge of what used to be referred to as the fire prevention division. We, as a decision from our former fire chief to change the title to be a little bit more encompassing of what we do, and we now call ourselves a community risk reduction division. So that includes fire prevention, fire safety, public education, public information, all bundled into one division.
I see. And fire marshal means for folks
Means
who
I'm in
might
charge of that division.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
you you go into to places, right? And you check for code and
Right,
that.
so part of our job is doing inspections of public buildings, either buildings under construction to make sure they meet fire code and life safety standards, or we also do inspections of existing buildings that are open to the public, such as auditoriums, movie theaters, schools, hospitals, anywhere where there's public access, to make sure that fire codes are being followed and updated, and make sure the buildings are safe for the people that occupy them.
How are you handling the well, it's consolidation, so is all fire code the same through each city, or with our unincorporated, as you go from building to building, there's different codes that you have to follow? Is this something that you manage, or is it all the same from city to city?
Well, in the state of California, what we have is we have the California Fire Code. And it is based on the international fire. We adopt the international fire code and we add California amendments to it. So it becomes the California Fire Code, which is enforced throughout the state of California. However, each city, each town you go into, each fire district can add more to the code. They can make the fire code more restrictive as it applies to their specific area. They can't make it less restrictive. They can't take anything away from the code, but they can actually add to it, similar to the building codes. And those
And
codes are, I'm sorry?
No, I was just gonna say, and do you find that cities have added a lot more restrictive amendments to the code, or do you find it kind of all the same across the county here?
Each area adds a little bit to it. For instance, in our fire district, in our jurisdiction, years ago, we adopted a fire sprinkler ordinance for residences back in the late 80s, which a lot of areas of the state of California did not have. So we had a local ordinance that adopted the fire code, the sprinkler ordinance. And then later, many years later, the state of California adopted a statewide residential sprinkler ordinance. Certain things like that apply to certain areas. Certain cities will make sections of code more restrictive that are applicable to their specific areas.
Okay. And so talking about the consolidation, Chief Walbridge, tell me a little bit more about the consolidation and really what that means for everyone here throughout the county.
Well, I'll start out by saying that, everyone's concern, and rightfully so, the public is, what will happen when I call 911, right? And I want to assure everybody, as we have through the whole consolidation process, through the LAFCO process, and prior to even that, is that the same fire trucks with the same personnel in the same amount of time, if not exactly the same amount of time, better, and we can talk about that in a bit, will show up at your front door, your place of business, or out on the trails in some open space. That's what we've been charged to do. That's what we'll continue to do on the operations side. And on the prevention side, Mike and his team will continue to work hard to keep the incidents or the emergencies from happening in the first place. So, I wanted to start out certainly by saying that, and kind of laying out the groundwork, what the consolidation has done already. Through shared services, because Aptos and Central Fire started sharing services, starting about, I think, 2 years ago now.
Right.
What we have seen is a more complete command structure that facilitates the crews being in their stations longer and more often, and I'll give you some examples in a second, which makes them more available for shorter responses. So I'll digress back to what I promised is, with more personnel and more facilitation and more support for the fire crews, we're able to, like I said, to keep the crews in their home areas or their local areas longer and more often. And so, for example, it wasn't too long ago that we would have crews leave their home station to go get supplies from where our central supply area receives products. And they would have to go get their materials to basically conduct what would be similar to everybody's household operations, right? Basic supplies. We now have a person that really is afforded through the consolidation and the cost reallocations from the two prior districts. It basically does that, runs the materials to those firefighters so they don't have to go traipsing across the district at odd hours or rush hour times, taking them out of their area. Additionally, when we do have incidents, we have second, third string command structure so that when we do have units on scene, one battalion chief isn't trying to run an incident, keep track of the crews and move equipment throughout the district to ensure that there's coverage. That battalion chief can simply focus on running the incident and keeping track on the crews that are in what we call IDLH atmospheres, or immediately dangerous to life and health atmospheres, because that's really their job, is accountability and keeping track of the crews, because it's not an option for people to be significantly hurt or not go home at all. The goal is everybody goes home every time. And so by having that second string, we have additional command personnel that ensures that we do have coverage behind the crews that are running emergencies. And so, you know, it's not as tangible effect of like, hey, right now, today, we added a whole fire crew. But what we did is we added the resiliency to be able to ensure that when resources are available, we can move them up and provide for coverage for those second up calls. So if we have a big fire, say in the city of Capitola, that is resource intensive, we have the ability to move resources into the city or within Soquel area or the Live Oak area, so that if we do get a medical emergency or another fire, we have another command team ready to go to address that emergency and equipment to do it. So kind of a complicated answer to a simple question once again, but you know, there's a lot of very little less tangible things that we have found that have really made a huge difference, I think, for our crews that we see day in and day out riding in the fire trucks and engines.
Yeah, you know, when I hear the word consolidation, I hear like the reduction of, right? So for many, it was, well, what are we losing from this? Is this, and that kind of goes into your point about response time. So are there now less fire trucks out or fire stations throughout the county in this consolidation, or when it or is it the same amount of firehouses, same amount of staff that we have now compared to before?
It's really the, you know, if you go to the fire stations, it's the same amount of firefighters and the same amount of stations. Are you guys able to hear me? It looks like you guys stopped.
Oh, I can hear you, but now you froze. I think a UFO probably went over and messed up with the satellite there. Mike, do you want to jump in?
I'll jump in here. I just kind of in line with what John was saying. That was one of the big concerns from the community when we started talking about consolidation. We were getting phone calls. It's like, which fire stations are going to close and how many people are you going to lay off? The answer was none. We still have the same number of staff. We have the same number of stations. They're in the same places. Nothing has moved. Today, anybody within the former Aptos La Selva district or the Central Fire Protection District, you dial 911, you're still going to get a big red truck with at least 3 people on it there to help you with whatever you need. The service has not changed at all. If anything, this is more of an administrative and maybe of economic change. So we've combined our budgets, we've combined our staff, which has been beneficial for both agencies. John talked about shared, I think he mentioned shared services earlier. So actually, prior to the official consolidation, we started sharing services with Aptos La Selva Fire District. We started by sharing actually it was the fire prevention staff started sharing services with Aptos. So we had the Aptos fire inspectors and fire marshal, we had the central fire marshal, and we actually had one fire inspector that was employed by both districts. She was 50-50 for both agencies going back and forth. And so when the consolidation came, the fire prevention division, now known as community risk reduction, was already consolidated. And we had done the same thing with our administrative staff and our training staff. So those portions were already consolidated by the time the consolidation was official. So we were very proactive in that regard. So the last thing to do was consolidate the 4 stations from one side and 3 stations on the other side into 7 stations now. And all the firefighters are cross-training and working in different stations, getting to know the other side, working with different people, working out of different fire stations, getting to know the other side of the district. So that's where we are now.
And what perfect timing with all that occurred with our fires, right? Like,
Yeah.
what a time to
Yes, they
have
did.
to band together and work together.
Mhm.
Chief Walbridge, are you back? I think
Uh-oh.
he's still.
Well,
Yeah, I just
oh,
turned
there
off
he
my
is.
camera. I'm back. I turned off
Okay.
my camera because I think that might be causing a problem with my internet connection since I am home and I have
Okay.
an issue sometimes with streaming. But what was the question again?
Well, so Mr. DeMars finished it up, but I do want to follow up about just what response time even means. Can either one of
Ooh.
you just define response time and really what that means?
You want to take that one, John?
Sure. So we hold ourselves to a standard internally, and Aptos and Central were basically the same in that we expect a response time in the urban area of around 6 minutes, depending on whether it's a medical or it's a fire, it adjusts somewhat. And so depending on what the public pays for, right? I mean, we could reduce that response time down to next to nothing, but it would take an exorbitant amount of money. Or in some areas that are very rural, those response times are much higher. There's no federally set standard. We hold ourselves to a 6-minute response time in the urban areas. And so what I mean by the response times will remain the same, it basically is a reflection of exactly what you said, Mayor Brooks, is the number of fire stations, are they changing? The number of personnel, is that changing? And no, none of that is changing. Central Fire was 4 stations, Aptos Fire was 7 stations. Those 4 stations and 7 stations are now 7, or those 4 stations and 3 stations are now 7 stations. I can't do math.
A different kind of math, John.
Yeah, it's high math. And those stations haven't moved. And so, what we have experienced in short is we keep those resources, what we call resources, which are the crews and the fire engines, in their houses longer, and we're more efficient about backfilling and managing second up incidents. And so that's the subtleties that we've already found and the efficiencies we've already found within the consolidation. And prior to the consolidation, we couldn't say we were all one agency because we weren't, but we did it all through shared services. So we basically proved to ourselves through shared services prior to the consolidation being complete that, yeah, we're going the right direction. This is really working. We are dovetailing. And so it's been a big effort, long-term effort, but I think from my perspective, and I think in time the numbers will reflect it, that it is more efficient as far as response times and keeping the crews in quarters longer, or in their houses, or in their first due, what we call their first due areas, or their primary responsibility areas longer. So, take the Capitola Fire Station across the street from City Hall. The expectation is that they're in their quarters longer, or in their first due area, which is the city of Capitola, longer and more often, which makes them more available for calls. So it just kind of make it more simple.
Are there any other changes you can think of that would directly impact it or have directly impacted our community members or throughout the county? I think it was you, Mr. DeMars, who just said it's more administrative. There really hasn't been, but anything that has stood out to you thus far?
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, and this is kudos to all of our divisions, and by divisions, we have an operations division, we have a CRR division, we have an HR division and finance division, similar to your city. What I've seen is, certainly we can take the CZU fire, as well as the recent, recent fires that we had due to the winds in January. And we really were able to bring back a number of our personnel to the point where I had people up at our dispatch center going, how is it you're pushing more equipment out the door to go help your neighbors, as well as staff the fires that we had in our own district, which was down in the south end in the Aptos Hills. And it's a direct reflection of the synergy, for lack of a better way to describe it, that our personnel are giving back to the community. They're the ones coming in off duty and literally staffing every piece of equipment we have, and we're running out of seats. We literally at one point ran out of seats to put people. And we didn't turn them away. We still brought them in. We have pickups and we have staff vehicles, and Mike's division, their people were able to staff, life hazard things like wires down and trees down, as well as help us in the, what we call Department Operations Center, which is just kind of a mini dispatch center for low priority incidents within the fire district when our main dispatch center starts to get overwhelmed. But, the bottom line is we were able to help our neighbors. We're able to take care of our own business and still able to backstaff our stations after an hour or two with 7 pieces of equipment. We were able to achieve full staffing again in light of these massive fires and having, 15, 16 pieces of equipment dedicated to those fires. So, that's a huge kudos to our people. It also, I think, should give an idea to the public, the level of resiliency that we can demonstrate, as well as along with Mike's division and his depth is now we have a logistics division, which includes the mechanics, and we can bring in 3 mechanics on overtime and start fixing equipment as it breaks down. That was never as a long-term time employee for the old Central Fire. We couldn't do that. We couldn't bring in 3 mechanics and start fixing equipment out in the field and fix other people's equipment, right? That resiliency wasn't there. So the layer of resiliency that we've seen by, somewhat doubling the size of our organization, I think has been, I think phenomenal and has at least shown me more than I ever expected on the front side of this.
Yeah. So Chief, do we want to try out your video before we move on to the next question? I'm staring at your name and
okay, I'll give it a
There we
shot.
go.
let's try it. I mean, I don't mind looking just at Mike over here, but and I love your background too.
Oh yeah, no, it's our chalkboard wall at home, and my high school age son just came home and he's starting to steal my bandwidth. So
Yeah, tell him to get off the internet. I always have to tell my 6-year-old the same thing, like, not now.
exactly. So I'll try it. If I have to blank it out and then yell at him, I will. But
Okay,
we'll go from there.
fair. So you mentioned the fires, and I feel like it wasn't too long ago. I actually don't remember who I was talking to, but this is when I was learning about actual response time, and they were saying, most, well, at least in Capitola, when the truck goes out, it was more for medical emergencies than fires. We had the luck of not having many fires in the county. Then came what we now know as the most horrific fires in history in the county. And I don't know if you were on, Chief Walbridge, when I was telling Mr. DeMars that what timing to have consolidated, right? And to be able to really pull all your, to pull everyone together at such a critical time. What should the community, we can all have our own personal takeaways about what the fires taught us, but what are some things you think that are important for the community to know about fires and the future of fires here in Santa Cruz County?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of factors that contribute to, what we have experienced in recent years. And I mean, statewide, nationwide, and now, countywide. But I think that, I'm going to certainly turn this over to Mike, but I think you've got a number of factors that have led to where we're at in this state and this nation. And I think that like any solution, it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. There's not going to be one silver bullet that fixes this. It's going to be a team effort. And by team effort, I mean state, local government, and the public themselves have to get out, and we all have to do work. And Mike's gonna, be able to talk at length, and this is a 2-hour discussion by itself. Some of the efforts that are starting to come to fruition, even in this county, being modeled after some counties that experienced a similar disaster, only a little more in the past than we have, like Marin County. But I'm gonna let Mike take it and just everybody know that this has really got to be a team effort. There is no one solution to this issue and this problem. And just like there's no, in my opinion, no single cause to this problem. So Mike, go ahead. I'm just going to mute myself, and then I'm going to get somebody else off the internet in this house.
Oh, okay. So mainly, I guess, in regards to what we call the CZU Lightning Complex fire, that 86,000 acre fire we had, that was, I think, statistically, I heard that was the 9th largest wildfire in California history. Or somewhere in those numbers. All things considered, I mean, I know we had a lot of property damage, a lot of homes lost, but in that whole 86,000 acres, only one life lost, which I call success. I give a lot of credit to the fire departments in the San Lorenzo Valley, Brents Forty, Ben Lomond, Boulder Creek, who did it was in their backyard, and they made the decision early on to evacuate the area, which I think saved a lot of lives. It was a very a good decision on their part and timely decision on their part to order the evacuation. In regards to fire safety in the wildland areas, it's something that it's not new. It's not a new concept. We have often tried to encourage and educate the members of this fire district, Aptos Summit Fire District, for those people that live in the rural areas, what we call the urban wildland interface, to maintain safe distances around your home, to practice fire safety, especially in those areas where you live in a heavy fueled area. And this is not, like I said, not a new concept, but of course now with the advent of that 86,000 acre fire we had last year, we find that the public is a lot more receptive to the information we have to share. And before we would go to them saying, hey, we want to teach you about fire safety in the wildland, they're actually coming to us saying, what do we need to do to protect our homes? So we have actually ramped up that education process this past year. We every year during fire season, and go backwards just a little bit. Fire season usually begins in April and it goes through till December. During fire season, we actually take on extra inspectors. We hire extra people during that time to specifically go into what we call the urban wildland interface, to interact with people that live in those areas, to explain to them how to make their property safer, to maintain a fire safe, defensible space zone is what we call it around your home for fire protection in the wildland areas. And this past year, we couldn't get out there enough and talk to enough people. Everybody wanted the information. They were calling us, trying to make requests and appointments to meet with our inspectors. Very successful program this year, and we're actually trying to ramp up for this coming fire season with even more information and more educational programs. We're working on several concepts or programs introduced to the community this coming fire season. One of them is called the Ready, Set, Go program. So preparing your property for the eventual fire danger, get set when the evacuation order comes, and then go. Grab your family, grab your whatever you can carry and get out safely. So we'll be working on a couple of those projects this year. We already have started working on them, so we'll be prepared to implement them this coming fire season.
Yeah, I found a bag in my husband's truck, and I'm like, what is this bag? Where'd this bag come from? And I forgot that I had put multiple go bags, and I thought I had put them all away, but I found another one hidden like underneath the back seat there. I'm like, well, I was ready, set, and I was ready to go. So the program definitely was heard loud and clear, especially during those times there. Chief Walbridge, did you want to add anything about, we've passed this, but more so, like, what are some of the things the community should know for the future, that there's some programs in place, anything else that you feel is important for our community members to know?
Yeah, we've had, like Mike said, we've had an absorbent amount of people reach out to us when in the past, like Mike said, is, oh boy, here they are, they're going to tell me to cut my brush again. And now they're seeking information, and they want to be, and by they, the public, they want to be educated, and I think we have an opportunity to really be able to provide that education. And my direction to CRR is, we need to facilitate that education, and CRR, Mike's division, has brought that forward with suggestions even before I was in this role, as far as how do we start building the structure toward educating our folks and our constituents. And we're looking at, we've looked at and have approved, some structures within the organization to provide educators to the public for those questions. As we're not going to come in and clear somebody's brush. There's absolutely no way we can do that. But we can teach people how to do it, what to do. And, there is a large concerted effort going on through the CAO's office in this county. And they've actually established a whole brand new division under the CAO's office called the Office of Resiliency, Recovery, and Response. And, with that kind of united front and, the people that are tied in with, Office of Resiliency, Recovery, and Response, the organizations like ourselves, other fire departments, public works, everybody that's tied into that gives you a greater opportunity for grant funding. And so they've really been able to kind of coalesce and look toward grant funding, allocate and prioritize different areas within the county. And that's.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost him again. I think it's time for him to go yell at his son again.
Super hard so that whatever it is that we do in conjunction with the rest of the county, and it's the same. The last thing I want to do is create some one-offs for members of the public in Capitola or Aptos that's different than somebody say up in Zayante, right? So while we're not responsible for Zayante, our execution of the plan needs to be the same as the folks in Zayante or up in the San Lorenzo Valley are experiencing. Right? Otherwise, the system won't really work. It has to really be the same system countywide, and it really needs to be a concerted and collaborative effort. So that's been the direction to CRR, and that's the direction they've taken, honestly. And they've done a great job and continuing to do a great job. And we're modeling ourselves after what has worked in different jurisdictions as far as a county effort. And there's a lot more to come and a lot more efforts to do, as you're well aware of.
And so what's going on up there now? Fires, the fires are out, it's contained. What's going on? Is there still cleanup happening? When the rains were here, there was a lot of the fear of mudslides. What's the latest on that?
So the debris flows are still a concern. Obviously, we're not completely out of the woods yet as far as debris flow planning. They've put in a lot of evacuation, pre-evacuation instructions through a system the county recently invested in and used during the CZU. And so they've implemented that. There's a lot of trigger points, or I should say, measurements for how much rainfall there is. In our world, we call them trigger points, but rain per hour, amount of rainfall, that kind of thing, where they do start the evacuations and they give advisories and warnings and such as that. That effort started in the fall, right after the CZU, because they could see that, we have wet winters and we have a lot of rain all at once. As we start to come out of that, and I was up there, I think about a week ago, there's a lot of cleanup going on. What I've heard is, a lot of people are putting in for permits for rebuilding. And there's a lot of political, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of measures, Senate bills and Assembly bills moving through Sacramento as far as when you can rebuild, where you can rebuild. And obviously that's got to vet itself through the political landscape as the folks and the victims of the CZU and other fires that we had last summer and the summer before and the summer before that have to start navigating that landscape. So a lot of work to do politically, a lot of work to do cleanup wise. This fire won't be put to bed for decades to come as far as the rebuilding effort and, getting back to what was normal. And hopefully we can improve on normal, have more fire resistive building construction, and ultimately better access for us to be able to get in while the public is trying to get out.
And you mentioned the fire season, what's the future of fires? Where, this was from lightning, right? This was like purely weather related. Are there still some concerns with that this could happen again in the area? And what would that look like, or any other areas your team is focusing on more so than others, just based off of what's happened before?
Mike, you want to start, or you want to?
Sure, I'll start on this one. Yeah, Yeah, the CZU complex fire was actually started by that freak lightning storm we had. I mean, that came out of nowhere, completely unexpected. We do not usually get that kind of thunder and lightning activity in this area, caught everybody by surprise. And where the fire originated in the Boulder Creek area was in a somewhat remote area, and it started late at night when most people were still asleep. So the fire got a really good head start before it was really noticed by authorities and the residents and so forth. So that was, unfortunately, that's why it got going so big and so fast, because it was in a remote area and it got started before anybody noticed it was there. And it got a really head start and got ahead of the fire service. So it's a rare occurrence, kind of a fluke, something we haven't seen in this area in long time. I hope it doesn't happen again anytime soon. But I think because of this situation, I think we're a little bit better, more prepared, a little bit more aware of these kind of things. And with the public outreach we're trying to incorporate, I think the public is a lot more aware, but I think they're going to be a lot more educated after this event on how to defend themselves against such a situation, how to better prepare, and how and when to evacuate if necessary.
Mm-hmm. And so the programs you mentioned are, and maybe I misheard you, Chief Walbridge, but so there's some programs going on through the county and then some through Central Fire. Where can folks find just resources on more fire prevention or fire safety? Where can they access all of that?
I know you asked John, but can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead. You can start, Mike, and then I'll kind of explain my background on that too. But you can start.
In Santa Cruz County alone, we have 11 or 12 different fire departments, and we each have our own fire prevention or community risk staff. We meet several times throughout the year through the Fire Prevention Officers Association. We try to share resources. We try to share information. Of course, each community, just like they adopt different ordinances and add to codes that are more appropriate for their individual area. We try with the fire prevention effort to be consistent throughout the county. We try to use the same information. We try to use the same resources so that you hear how to be fire safe in Capitola is the same information you get as how to be safe in Felton. We try to make it consistent across the board so that you're not hearing different information, people aren't getting confused. So like I mentioned earlier, the Ready, Set, Go program, we got a grant earlier this year to move forward with that program. And we're sharing that information with the other fire prevention officers. We share information, we try to use the same standards, the same information so that there isn't a mixed message going out there to the community. And there was a grand jury report that came out earlier this year, which is encouraging us to work together with all the agencies in the county so the message and the education is consistent. And we're trying to accomplish that.
And for my part, I think what I was trying to portray or relay was the level of cooperation that this effort is undertaking countywide. Mike just talked about the fire prevention officers of Santa Cruz County. Yeah, they meet frequently. The fire prevention officers are working with the Fire Safe Council, the Santa Cruz County Fire Safe Council, as well as this newly created office under the CAO, or newly created division under the CAO's office, the county CAO's office of what we call OR3, but the Office of Resiliency, Recovery, and Response. And so at the end of the day, there's going to be projects where it is beyond the capabilities of the private homeowners, or maybe it's even public land. And where do you get that money to create shaded fuel breaks? And a lot of these buzzwords that we've been hearing about and talking about, shaded fuel breaks don't make themselves. They take quite a bit of money to make and build. There's a lot of obstacles to having one put in and it be effective. But at the end of the day, all of these measures that really are going to result in risk mitigation, take a united front. And Mike's division has been working diligently with our partners in fire protection throughout the fire districts and fire departments of the county, as well as the CAO's office and the Fire Safe Council. So a lot of collaboration going on behind the scenes. And what this really results in is that we all do this in the same way. And that's the important part, is that countywide, we need to address this in the same way, and we need to have a united front. And we need to be able to tell the public the same information, or educate the public in the same way throughout the county. And that's what's going to make the difference in the long run. This isn't a 1-year effort. This is a 10-year effort, a 20-year effort. And after that, it's an ongoing effort.
Mr. Demers, was there anything, I know it's United, I know it's the same message, but is there anything specific to Capitola and in terms of safety precautions that we need to do differently here than up in the mountains, or anything that when you guys are planning out from city to city, things that you're focusing on specific to our little 2-mile radius
Your
of a
little
community,
town.
right in the middle of everything else
Right in
that's
the
happening?
middle. I will say, fortunately, the city of Capitola does not have a large wildland fire threat. You're basically suburban and city area, with the adjacent New Brighton area, which is kind of wild at State Park area. There is a little bit of wildland there, but fortunately you do not have a big wildland threat. So the focus within the city is going to be more of a suburban or a residential fire safety program or plan.
So if I don't ask you this question, my 6-year-old's going to be really upset with me. Her question tonight was, during the fires, why did you not use the ocean water?
Actually, I think ocean water was used.
Oh,
Yeah, and so
I can't wait to tell her this.
yeah, we try to use our resources, which are, fire hydrants, which supply firefighting water, but out in the rural areas where the CZU complex fire was, you don't have fire hydrants on the streets. We have a lot of private water sources, which a lot of folks that live in the rural areas are required to have static water supply, water storage tanks on their property with private fire hydrants. But those get used up pretty quick in a large scale fire such as that. And also the fire itself sometimes prevents us from reaching those private water supplies. The fire is between us and the water supply sometimes in the private water supply, water storage tanks. So a lot of the aircraft that was brought in by CAL FIRE, they will go straight out to the ocean and they will fill their aircraft with seawater and use that to fight fires. It's not uncommon. You got a whole ocean out there that's not being used. So we do utilize that on occasion.
Well, I didn't Google it, there was this, I just thought it was just not good for the plants or the trees that were going to be regrowing in the future. And that's why we don't use ocean water, but I'm happy.
It is not, because if you get too much saltwater intrusion into the ground, plant life won't grow back. That's true. However, if your resources on fresh water are running low, ocean.
Yeah, okay.
Use what you have to. That's one of the fire department mottos, if you will, is you adapt and you overcome. You run out of one thing, you use something else.
Well, we most certainly did overcome that tragedy. Everyone just worked so hard, and it was just such a community effort, and to see the resilience afterwards and just all the great takeaways have been created because of it. It just makes me feel really honored to be part of our community, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know we only have a couple more minutes. So I had to throw this one in here. What are your goals for a marine safety program, given that the city of Capitola has contracted for lifeguard services from Santa Cruz for years?
Yeah, I'll take that. That's one's probably.
I was going to keep going on and on, but you know where I'm headed with this one.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. The city of Capitola contracts with the city of Santa Cruz for lifeguard service. And, and that's been going on for a number of years. Within that, Central Fire has been contracting with the city of Capitola to provide the instructor, the trainer, if you would, or we've been doing the seasonal returnee junior guard instructor training. And that's been a successful program. I know that our folks have enjoyed doing that, and it's an opportunity to connect with our constituents, our collective constituents, and it's been good. Looking forward to the future, I kind of started down that road when I talked about, we're heavily into transition, we're going to go into planning and execution. We're working really hard to get through planning, and certainly one of our goals and one of our desires is to provide that service to the city of Capitola. Certainly the city of Santa Cruz's Marine Safety Division already had their structure built, right? Because they already are charged with the city beaches. Extending to another beach was, is in line with the mission for their Marine Safety Division already. We would have to form a model very similar to that in the near future to be able to address the expiration of the contract that the city of Capitola has with the Marine Safety Division for Santa Cruz City. And yeah, we do want to provide that service, and it is a goal, and we're working hard. We just recently purchased another rescue watercraft, or we approved the purchase of another rescue watercraft for that very purpose, so that we can maintain the training and the status of our RWC operators. So even something like that seems somewhat small is a step in that direction. And we are working hard to bring ourselves to the point where we can provide that service, because there is a value to ourselves and the city of Capitola cooperating in that manner. And there's many, many side benefits that I could easily take up the rest of the time, as far as community outreach, public education, a lot of the same kind of flavor that Mike just got done talking about as far as hazard mitigation in the wildland areas. The same ideals apply to the effort that we would put forth toward, addressing the lifeguard services with the city of Capitola. As well as, we picture in the long run that effort can go beyond the city, and we may be able to look at other beaches within our jurisdiction where we could provide a similar service. So like I said, we want to, like always, we want to provide a great product at the end, and we want to be able to develop that. And so we've got a little bit of time, and that's what we've been working behind the scenes to do.
Wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to extending that relationship and moving it forward. So we're almost at the end of time here. So this is your opportunity to add anything. If there were goals you might have for yourself or for the future as we move forward and heading into summer, what are some last thoughts? Mr. DeMar, shall we start with you?
Okay, let's see. Goals. I just want to get through this consolidation.
Yeah,
No,
been a long time coming.
yeah, no, I'm kidding. Actually, the consolidation is here, and it's like John said, it's a done deal, and it just there's a lot of little stuff still to do. For instance, I just moved into a new office, and I still can't see it, but I still have boxes full of stuff I haven't unpacked yet. Little things like that we need to do. But goals for the future is just onward and upward, move forward. This is a great thing that we finally accomplished, this consolidation. I think good things to come. Better service for the community. I think better outreach. Better education for the community, for the wildland efforts and any other fire prevention efforts. God, I don't know. I can't think of anything. Sorry.
It's the end of the day. It's
End
7
of the
o'clock.
day. I've been here since 7:30.
Oh gosh, I appreciate you so much. Chief?
Yeah, like I keep alluding to, is the planning process. This is a stakeholder input, and stakeholders include our internal stakeholders, they include our external stakeholders, and that's really kind of what I want to do, is just do my little sound bite that, our external stakeholders include our local politicians like yourself, Mayor Brooks, as well as the rest of the Capitola City Council and supervisors, and more importantly, the public. I know the public, everyone's busy. But our plan is only going to be as good as the amount of input that we get. And so I look forward to everybody investing in the future of our fire agency and letting us know what you want to see from your fire department. And that's the important part, is we want to answer the public's call as far as what they want to see and what is of value to them. We have our own, internal stakeholders that will do the same, including myself. But in this case, really the more the merrier, and the better the product in the end that we'll get out the other side. So look forward to everybody's input coming into this kind of planning stage that'll be starting around midsummer. And I look forward to seeing everybody. And I appreciate Mayor Brooks, you allowing us to kind of
Uh-oh.
Oh no, during my time of
Not
thank
again.
you. It was right when I was gonna get all of the all the credit. Well, one thing I did ask Chief Walbridge at our last when he presented when we presented him as a new chief was the patches. What happens to
Oh.
all of the old patches? Look at that. That's pretty nice.
We are, I'm keeping mine. These are going to be collector's items.
That's what he said. We need the Capitola one for our history museum.
In
We're
fact,
gonna have to find-
over here in my office, I have a bag of the old Aptos patches that never got used. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
so crazy. Well, Mr. DeBars, thank you so much for your time this evening. I hope you get home safely and get some time to yourself. And thank you.
I'm sure I will. I live in Capitola, actually.
Oh, well then, I'll see you soon then, neighbor.
Yeah,
And thanks to
thanks.
Chief Walbridge.
Yeah,
You all
thanks a
have a
lot for
good
having,
night.
I'll speak for John. I'll say thanks a lot for having both of us here. We appreciate it. We'd love to do this again in the future. If you'd like to have us, any other fire safety, community education concerns, we'd be happy to try to answer any questions, address the public for whatever they need from us.
Absolutely. I'll take you up on that. We'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Good night.
Bye.